Welcome back to another episode of You're All Doomed, where we slice and dice our way through Friday the 13th, Part 3, 13 minutes at a time. I'm your host, Brian.
I'm Fangoria subscriber, Greg.
This chunk begins with a shot of Rick's dead battery car broken down on the side of the road and ends with what looks like an article about Godzilla, and it looks like there might be something splattered on the page, but we're not really sure what it is just yet.
I mean, I know we'll get to this, but I wonder, like, is it a Time magazine article about an actual Godzilla attack?
It could be.
That'd be pretty kick-ass.
We start things off back at Higgins Haven, where Chuck is awoken from his nap and decides to head outside to take a dump in the outhouse. So this is the second time we're seeing someone take a dump.
Yeah, there's a lot of pooping in this movie.
And just like Harold, he decides to do something, to multitask while he's taking a dump, except this time Chuck, lights up a joint and, hey, why not?
Yeah, why not?
While he's in there, the outhouse starts to shake, and not for the reasons you would expect it to, but he starts to freak out a little bit. And if I'm not mistaken, he stands up and doesn't wipe and goes outside to investigate.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wondered how far into the process he was when the outhouse started shaking. Like, did he have to retract and then go outside?
Pinch it off mid evacuation.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, he wasn't in there very long, so it's possible that the process had not started yet. But he does. He just pulls his pants back up and he goes outside, and naturally he just figures it's Shelley messing around again. But as he kind of goes out there, he sees someone like really slowly and kind of deliberately walking into the barn.
Very spooky.
Very and
spooky.
It was reminiscent of the scene from Part 1 where Mrs. Voorhees was on the porch of the cabin, and I think it was Ned saw her kind of just like slowly walk in, and
lurking
it was almost
in the doorway
deliberate.
and kind of melt back into the darkness.
Yeah, it was like a deliberate attempt, like, hey, I'm going to make sure you see me go in here so that you are curious enough to maybe come investigate. So, yeah, I think this is kind of an instance where Jason is almost baiting his victim.
Luring someone over to him in a way.
Yeah, I thought that was nice.
So then Chili shows up, kind of wondering where Chuck was, but it doesn't seem like she was the one who was shaking the outhouse. She doesn't say like, I gotcha, anything like that. And he makes, Chuck mentions like, oh, that's Shelley, let's go scare him in the barn. And she's like, oh, okay, like she didn't know that anything was going on out here. So was Jason the one shaking the outhouse? That doesn't seem like his style, and I don't feel like he could have gotten over to the barn that quickly. That seems a little unresolved.
No, that's true, because when Chuck says it's probably Shelley, Chili plays along or agrees and goes, yeah, it probably was Shelley. So I don't think she was the one shaking it, but I also don't feel like a lot of time has passed since the shaking outhouse and Chuck going out to investigate. So in the barn's, probably 100 yards away, I'm guessing. So he's covering a lot of ground if he did shake the outhouse and then run over to the barn.
Maybe it was Paul, and he shook the outhouse and then teleported away.
Quite possibly.
So then we have a little pointless scene of Chuck and Chili going into the barn to stage a counterstrike against Shelley.
Yeah, well, there's at least a dozen like individual stables within this barn, and they look in two of them before giving up. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty pointless investigation, but they look in two stables and they're just like, well, I guess he left, and that's it.
Yeah, makes no sense. So then we cut over to Vera, who is outside for a breath of fresh air and is sitting on the dock of the lake, kind of just enjoying a peaceful sit by the water.
And as she's sitting there, this hand suddenly reaches up from underneath the water and tries to pull Vera into the lake.
Yeah, it grabs her ankle and...
Yeah, and it's pretty creepy because it comes out of nowhere, and right at that moment, someone jumps out of the lake wearing a hockey mask and a wetsuit and carrying a harpoon gun.
Yeah, spear gun.
A readily available harpoon gun, apparently.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, okay, so it turns out to be Shelley pulling another one of his obnoxious pranks. But let's talk about this for a second, because he's wearing, as I am right now for recording this, he's wearing a wetsuit and a hockey mask. Two things that don't really go together at all. And he's carrying a spear gun. Did he bring the spear gun on the trip with him? We never saw it in the van.
No, and it definitely would not have fit in the suitcase that he was carrying with him.
Right. It's not, it doesn't appear to be collapsible or anything like that. So, did he find it at the, was there a scuba, a set of scuba gear? Like maybe Rick has dive gear and that's why he's got the sticker on the back of his car. And so Shelley saw a wetsuit that would just happen to fit him, even though he's heftier than Rick is. And then happened to have this hockey mask with him. And so was, paddling around under the lake wearing a hockey mask to swim over to Vera. It doesn't hang together very well. It's a pretty flimsy pretext, for this, this outfit.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like the idea. I mean, the wetsuit, fine, maybe he would have brought it with him. I'm not sure why. I mean, he did admit that he didn't want to go skinny dipping because he wasn't skinny enough, so maybe he would have gone swimming if he wore this wetsuit because it covered him up. The hockey mask is a seemingly random prop for him to bring along, but, whatever. But the harpoon gun,
I mean, who would go anywhere with a hockey mask just, randomly with their luggage, with their overnight bag? That makes no sense. I also think I'm 90% sure he's wearing a button with his own face on it pinned to his wetsuit. You never really get a very clear look at who this button is, but just based on the outline and the hair on of the picture on the button, it seems like it might be his own face.
I wouldn't pass it by him. I didn't notice it, but I would not pass it by him. It sounds like something Shelley would do.
It doesn't go well.
No,
it doesn't go well.
Vera is understandably, pissed off at Shelley once again and asks him why he keeps doing these stupid things. And he says that he just is trying to impress her and it's clearly not working. So at some point he's got to realize he's got to try a different tactic. But he kind of sulks away and, goes back to Higgins Haven to, feel sorry for himself.
He winds up diverting towards the barn for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
The door swinging open and it catches his attention or something. But he slumps off to the barn and goes inside. And just as he enters, like a calf head drops down from the ceiling or something. It's hanging. It's either in a bag or festooned with cobwebs. It's kind of unclear exactly what this object is, but if it's an animal head, what the fuck is that doing there? I don't know what that.
Well, I also want to know what it is about the barn. This is like the 18th or 19th person that has gone into the barn to investigate something that they've heard or possibly seen, and like it's just this endless stream. There's like should be like a revolving door on the front of this thing. It's just like, whoa, I think I heard something. I think I saw something. Let's go to the barn. Let's go to the barn. And it's like, oh my god, get over it. A
flashing neon sign saying "Enter, enter." It's. I don't know that I would ever go into a creepy random barn in the middle of the night, but...
And everyone also always has an immediate suspicion of what or who the noise could have been. And
it's Muffin.
Yeah, it's Shelley. And, Shelley thinks the noise is Chuck and Chili, so he goes to investigate. And while he's doing that, Vera has stayed down by the lake, and she's just continues to sit on the dock, and... Somehow she remembers that she still has Shelley's wallet from their trip to the store.
Yeah, she feels something in her pocket and reaches in, and it's Shelley's wallet.
And she opens it up and looks inside and finds a photo of Shelley and his mother, and she thinks it's kind of sweet. And suddenly she's, softening up a little bit to, her, getting angry at him before.
Yeah, she sees a softer side of Shelley and sees that he actually does have a genuine bond with another human being that doesn't revolve around pranking.
Once again, Vera hears something behind her, and she kind of like turns around really quickly as she does that.
Yeah, she's startled and kind of accidentally flings her arm a little too hard, turning around and pitches Shelley's wallet into the lake. I suspect it's probably waterproof nylon, so it's not the end of the world, and it floats. But she's alarmed that she's accidentally discarded Shelley's wallet. So
and I think she's probably mostly concerned about it because the picture of the mother is her, Shelley and her mom, his mom is in there. And so she probably feels responsible, and she's like, oh, well, I should probably try to get this.
I think she was going to go dig his condom out of his wallet and then go say, Shelley, to make it up to you, let's go upstairs to the hammock.
Yeah, that'd be a quick heel turn.
But so she gets off the dock and wades down on the shore and has to go in, I can have up to her knees almost in the water to retrieve the wallet. And as she's reaching for it, and grabs it, she sees a figure come out of the barn and walk down the dock toward her. So 59 minutes and 54 seconds into this movie, we have our first reveal of what I consider to be Prime, Jason Voorhees.
Yeah, the person is wearing a hockey mask, but it's clearly not Shelley. It's a completely different body type, and they're obviously not wearing a wetsuit. So this is Jason Voorhees in the hockey mask for the very first time.
Yeah, and it's a great first appearance because it's very sinister. He's kind of casually watching her as he walks methodically down the planking of the dock. Then he pauses behind a light pole and just kind of peers around. You know, he's not obscured. You can see him clearly, but he's just kind of sheltered behind it, peering at her in a very quizzical but very malevolent fashion. It's great. It's a really strong appearance.
Yeah, and at first, Vera thinks it is Shelley, and she doesn't really take a good look at him, and she's like, "Hey, sorry, I dropped your wallet in the water. I'm just getting it." And then, as the person starts to get a little closer to her, and then actually walks out on the dock, she's like, "Hey, wait, who are you?" And realizes it's not Shelley, and she just doesn't really know what to do, but she doesn't really have time to think about it because Jason, hiding behind, or at least standing behind this light pole, raises his arm. He's holding the harpoon gun from that we saw earlier and takes dead aim at Vera, and we get what I would imagine is probably the best 3D shot in the movie.
Agreed.
Is this spear heading right toward you, and then it quickly cuts, and we see the spear go directly through Vera's eye.
Yeah,
just
it's fantastic.
Awesome shot.
It's in more ways than one. The sound effects of the spear gun firing, the bolt smacking her square in the face. It's a masterpiece of horror movie sound design. I love Vera's shock and surprise at her fate. She's not killed instantly. She has a moment to grasp at the bolt sticking out of her own eye. She's this choked gasping is totally creepy. It's fantastic. And then her lifeless body slumps and splashes into the water. Jason just kind of casually tosses the spear gun to the ground, turns around, and then
he just nonchalantly walks away. It's almost like he was like there was a little disappointment. Like he had this grand plan. He's like, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to shoot her in the face with the harpoon gun and it's going to kick so much ass. And then he did it. And for whatever reason, he was kind of disappointed by the end result because he just kind of turns around, drops the harpoon gun. He's like, whatever, and he just very casually just starts walking away.
Yeah, I mean that's a funny way to look at it. I mean, I kind of see it as just how dismissive he is of human life.
No big deal.
It's almost like a mic drop for him, where he's just like, okay, boom, done, see ya. I love how careless he is in the sense of not giving a shit. And then he turns around, goes back along the dock and stops and stares up at the house, so he's kind of measuring what he's going to do next. But Vera is gone, and that's too bad. I liked her a lot. She was a cool character in this movie. I mean, she had to put up with a lot from racists and Shelley, but she was always thoughtful and always willing to see someone else's perspective. She was played by Catherine Parks, who also appeared in Weekend at Bernie's. But again, she's not Catherine Mary Stewart, even though she looks exactly like Catherine Mary Stewart. She was also a pageant girl before going into movies and won some sashes in that activity. So
yeah, she was a runner-up in the 1978 Miss America pageant.
Yeah, that's cool. So as Jason is gazing up at the house from the outside, we cut to inside, and we cut to an upstairs bedroom where Andy and Debbie are plowing each other on the hammock underneath a quilt. And because my wife is a quilter, I have some information about the quilt pattern that they're scromping under. The pattern is a chimney sweep block pattern. It's a type of friendship quilt that in the late 1800s gained a lot of popularity because settlers would craft these quilt blocks for to make an heirloom, and then they would sign the space that's in the center of each design so that they could give it to friends and family who they would likely never see again as their families dispersed across the frontier. So it's probably a very cherished heirloom in the Higgins family that has now got all sorts of bodily fluids all over it from the hammock-sex. I don't know about you, man, but would you ever want to bang in a hammock?
It seems like it would be more difficult than it's worth. There's just too much balancing that you would have to maintain. If you swing too far to the left or the right, you're spilling out, so to speak, and then hit the floor. And so I think the short answer would be no, probably not.
I agree. Aside from the physics of doing it in a moving support system, whether it's a hammock or a waterbed, the mesh pattern of a hammock, which is sort of almost like a fishnet pattern. If you take a small piece of fishnet and press it against your arm, you see the flabby flesh kind of bulging through the openings of the mesh, and it's just not a very flattering look either. So I feel like you would have rope burns.
It's like when you tie a string around your finger and you keep wrapping it around until it looks like a gladiator boot or something, and you've got these bulging.
Exactly. I don't feel like it's a flattering image for anybody, let alone the fact that you could be pitched off one side and in mid coitus. So
once they're done getting busy, Debbie says to Andy that it was the best one yet, which I thought was interesting because one of the sex sessions they've had impregnated her, and I would like to think that would be the one that she was most happy about.
Yeah, clearly she's very unsatisfied as a lover. She seems enraptured by impending motherhood, so that she got something out of all this. But I like to think that she's got a little notepad that has a rating system for.
This was better than last Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Two smiley faces better mean I actually came, and Andy's practicing. Maybe he's in endurance training and trying to last longer each time or something. So good for him. You're a champ, Andy. We cut back downstairs, and Jason has now entered the house. He's got a hockey mask, and he's wielding a machete. This is fully loaded Jason. This is as good as it gets.
Yeah, Debbie is in the shower, washing off Andy, and so to speak. And Andy walks into the bathroom once again on his hands, which was kind of impressive. But he wants to know if Debbie wants a beer.
Yeah, it's interesting because we see her in the shower, and kind of like we were wishing had been the case with Alice at the beginning of part 2, we see an odd shadow through the curtain from Debbie's perspective. We're not really sure what's approaching, and we know Jason's now in the house, and so at first, we think maybe it's Jason. She sees something and pulls the curtain aside, and it's this pair of legs, and I think Andy's butt. I think the way he's oriented, his butt is facing her.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's doing his little handstand stunt, and offers to go get her a beer. So Andy agrees to go get her a beer, and he hand walks his way out of the bathroom and down the hall to their bedroom first for some reason. And he passes by a little dresser that's in the hallway. It's there's no one there. It's just him walking by the hallway. Debbie calls him again for some reason, and he hand walks back out of the bedroom down the hall, presumably to go downstairs for the beer. But there's someone standing there this time.
And of course, it's Mr. Jason, and he just winds up and just chops down and brutally slices him in half. What we're assuming is from the crotch down, just all the way through, and just bisects Andy.
Yeah,
and just
it's
collapses to the ground.
It's creepy too because Andy sees a pair of feet and kind of from reverse perspective looks up and sees it coming. There's a shot of his surprised face when he sees this person with a hockey mask raise his arms over his head with a machete, and the next thing we know, boom. And you're right. I mean, it's vicious.
The sound of it slicing through, and then just the kind of just thump that you hear when the body lands on the ground. And it's probably the first kill in the movies so far that really made me just kind of cringe and wince, like, oh, that would be awful. And it's absolutely one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, it's absolutely a Hall of Fame kill. I watched it in slow-mo, and I don't really get what is done to him. Like you say, I mean, I presume he's being split from stern to stem, but the way they shot it, you don't really get a clear sense of exactly what happens to him in the moment. So it's really more about the idea of it that's horrifying than the effect itself.
Putting the pieces together. Well,
yeah, too bad we're not. But you're right, and the sound is fantastic, and overall, it's so shocking and horrifying. I mean, when you saw him standing on his hands earlier, you knew it was coming, but the payoff is just fantastic.
One thing I wondered too about this scene is that the ceilings in that hallway on the second floor must have been particularly high because for someone to be able to stand up, raise a machete above their head, and swing down and not hit the ceiling.
Oh yeah, good point.
Unless you're pretty short, which we don't think Jason is. That's nitpicking, but it's a great scene, and it'll always go down as one of the best of the best of Jason kills.
Yeah, for sure. Andy was played by Jeffrey Rogers, who also had a small part in Karate Kid 2 a few years later. And I'm led to believe that he's now a doctor, so he got out of acting. And
I saw that too. I also saw that he had to actually learn how to walk on his hands to get this particular role, which is a very strange mandate for this character. I feel like you would have hired an actor, and then the actor goes, oh, by the way, I can walk on my hands. And they go, oh, we've got a great idea for a kill. We should have you walk down the hallway and get sliced in half. But it sounds like maybe the kill all along was designed to be, a character that can walk on his hands, and Andy had to learn how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you probably couldn't put that in the casting notice because it'd probably be difficult to find. Like, you don't want to narrow your acting pool to people who know how to walk on their hands, because I imagine that's a fairly small percentage of the population. So cool he picked up that skill. I wonder if it serves him in his new career as a doctor.
Maybe it does.
Back in the shower, Debbie has decided she does not want that beer after all. Maybe impending motherhood has, made her think twice about imbibing alcohol. I don't really feel like the actress playing Debbie knows how to take a shower. She's kind of just lightly tossing water onto her shoulders and neck. She's really worried about rinsing her shoulders off.
Which makes you wonder what sex position they were in earlier. If she's concerned about
good point. I
cleaning
forgot what
her
they
shoulders.
were doing earlier. She might also be soothing rope burns from the hammock. It's cold water in that shower. But I think that I have an idea for a Friday the 13th Part 3 drinking game. Take a shot every time Debbie says the name Andy.
I think it's 12 times.
I would be in a coma by the end of that game. It's insane.
At some point, you just give up and go, okay, maybe he's not here or he can't hear me, so maybe I should stop calling his name.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I was kind of chuckling about this last night. We watched the movie The Lost Boys, and you commented that the name Michael is said 877 times in that movie, and I was thinking ahead to recording this and how we were going to have the same conversation about Andy. But she finishes up her shower and, still calling Andy's name incessantly, heads back into the bedroom to wait for him to come back upstairs, and lays down on the hammock with a magazine.
Do you think it's strange that she made it from the bathroom to the bedroom and didn't notice that someone had just been cut in half in the hallway? There's got to be some evidence. If not the body, at least a shitload of blood.
That had not occurred to me, but you are 100% absolutely
But she's just
right.
like, do, and then she just walks into the bedroom. And
it would have been great if they'd had a scene of her like slipping in the blood, but not looking down to see what it was.
Just thinking it was like wet, floor,
Yeah, like
spilled a beer or something.
Like Simon Pegg in Shaun of the Dead does that when he goes into the convenience store the morning after the zombie apocalypse. He slips on what is obviously a pool of blood and makes no notice of it because he's reading the can that he's reaching for out of the fridge. She lays in bed with a magazine, and it's an appropriate magazine to be reading for this movie.
Yeah, it's an issue of Fangoria, which was it's actually back in print now, but it was gone for a while. But it was a very popular horror magazine in the 80s that would focus a lot on makeup and creature effects and a lot of blood and guts type things. And I know it was a magazine that I would read from time to time if they're, particularly if Jason was on the cover, because there was usually a lot of behind the scenes stuff about, upcoming movies or a movie that just came out.
I remember there was one issue that had some shots of the deleted gore from Evil Dead 2, where one of the monsters is chopped up, dismembered on the floor, and it's just fantastically gory. And I was so disappointed that wasn't in the movie when I finally saw it. But that's a great magazine.
Yeah, it really is. The particular issue that Debbie is looking at, it says it's issue number 13, but I did a little digging. And it's actually the content within the magazine is issue number 1. And one of the articles that she sees in there is an article about Tom Savini, who was the makeup effects guru from the first Friday the 13th movie. And then there's another article titled 25 Years with Godzilla. And that's where she kind of pauses for a second. She must be a Godzilla fan.
Yeah, there's a great image on one page of Godzilla fighting Megalon on top of the World Trade Center towers, which unfortunately we know are no longer standing, but not because of Godzilla. But yeah, that was awesome. It kind of makes me want to see that movie.
And as she pauses on that article, blood suddenly starts to drip down from above onto the pages of the magazine, and there's 5 or 6 splatters, and that's kind of where we end now. So we're not really sure what the source of that blood is, but we know that it's not looking good for Debbie right now, most likely.
Yep. The kill count for this episode is relatively low. It's only 2, but they're both hands down Hall of Fame kills.
Hands down.
Vera and Andy, a spear gun through the eye and bisected while you're walking on your hands. Just
can we count Andy as 2?
Maybe we should. Yeah. Good point.
Because he's 2 from here on out.
Oh, so great. I mean, he might even be 3.
Yeah, depending on where the impact wound was.
I don't have anything else for this time.
Yeah, me neither.
All right.
So until next time, I've been Brian.
I've been Greg.
And you're all doomed.